Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to talk to one of our cronies for around the Burns world. Hi Jim, how are you doing?
Doing absolutely fantastic. Hi everybody.
Tonight folks, our guest is a well-known singer and an honorary member of Burns Club. So tonight, cronies everywhere, please welcome Kirsten Easdale.
Hello.
Hi Kirsten, how are you doing?
Fine, yeah, good. It's okay. Getting through this pandemic, and I'm very honoured to be here, and it's nice to be able to see and talk to people. It's a bit strange. I feel like a bit of a hermit over the last year or so.
Well, we're delighted to have you on. So if you've watched some of these podcasts, you'll know that our first question is always, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I was born in Glasgow. I was raised in Bothwell and Uddingston. We were a musical family. My father played piano, taught piano and taught voice. He was a bass baritone, sung principal bass and choirs, and both he and my mum were in musical theatre as well. My brothers and sisters, they sang in the Scottish Junior Singers. My sister sang with the SNO. So we've pretty much grown up. Music has always been in my life. Burns has always been in my life. So,
and does that go back to primary school? Did you go to primary school in Glasgow?
No, in Uddingston.
In Uddingston,
I went to Muiredge Primary in Uddingston. We had no Burns at all at primary. All my Burns was from home, and I don't know whether you want to talk about that now or whether you want to leave that.
Well,
for
we'll
Jim.
leave that to a bit later, and Jim can get you talking about that. At primary school, if you were singing at home, were you singing at school as well?
Occasionally, yeah.
But in school choirs and things? Or?
Yes, we used it more at secondary school in the houses. Not so much in school choirs. No, I took part in the house shows, what they called the house shows. Each house would put on a review, and the winning house would get the cup. So I used to take part in that. So that was the first time I trod the boards. But I'd always sung in the house at the piano with my dad, teaching me. Some of the first songs I ever learned were Burns songs. Eubanks and Braes and My Love's Like a Red, Red Rose. Sometimes, not even realising who Robert Burns was, I was already singing his songs. And I used to, my parents were very much into classical style of music. My father was a Burns singer as well. He would sing, he would go to Burns suppers and sing Brigton Burns Club or somewhere in Asia or wherever. He was very, very quiet about it. You just used to know that he was off to do something when he had the dinner suit on and the music case under his arm, and off he went.
and when you're at second, sorry, carry on.
I was going to say I used to, I liked all kinds of music when I used to listen to a lot of singers. Jazz singers, pop singers, classical singers, musical theatre. I just loved it all. And I used to get the reel-to-reel tape, the big old fashioned thing the size of a suitcase. That's the one. And in the old days, you used to, sometimes on the B side of a record, you would get the instrumental version. So I would put on the record player with the instrumental version and sing along and record it on the reel-to-reel. So long before the days of karaoke. So I suppose that was a kind of precursor to that. So and I played the violin as well. So I played the violin in the Lanarkshire Junior String Orchestra and in the school orchestra, which Kirsten McHugh was also in the school orchestra at the same time as me as well. She used to play the viola, I believe. And yeah, so music has always been in my life, and I had other pursuits as well. I was very sporty when I was young, not that you can probably tell nowadays. But I used to, I swam for Bells Hill ASC at club level, and I used to train 4 nights a week for that as well as doing all the orchestra and everything. I was in the Red Cross. I did ice skating. I did all my grades at ice skating and windsurfing. That was my big love as a teenager, was windsurfing. So there was never a point in my week where I wasn't doing something. I don't know where I get the energy from. I really don't, but I wish I had it now.
I'm trying to imagine windsurfing in Uddingston.
Well, I used to windsurf at Strathclyde Park.
Right.
That's where I started to windsurf. So I used to windsurf there. And then on occasion, you know, go in for races down the coast, down at Helensburgh or at Troon or over at Portobello, wherever they happen to be. So yeah, great fun. And on holiday as well. Wherever I went, I windsurfed.
Oh, tremendous. Yeah, I think you're the first guest that we've had that claimed windsurfing as one of their hobbies.
Well, I actually taught it as well. That was one of the first job I had when I left school, was teaching windsurfing in France. So I went off to France for about 6 months to teach windsurfing, and then came back and met my first husband. We get married. I had Stuart very young, and Stuart turned out to be autistic. So it was very apparent that there was something wrong pretty early on. So he was diagnosed at the age of 4, and he went to Struan House School in Alloa for the week, and he would come home at the weekend. So that was quite hard at first, waving him off in the taxi to go off to school, but I get so used to it. So and then later on, I was divorced. And I started to sing. People were asking me to go and sing here. They would come and sing here for us. We come, and I'm thinking, I can't do this all the time. Until one of them said, and I think it was a golf club, they said, we'll pay you, come and sing. I was like, okay then. And I think my first professional gig, my first professional fee, I got 20 quid, a chicken in a basket, and a taxi there and back, and a golf umbrella. So I thought, this is not bad, actually. I could get used to this. And then later on, I met, so I'm beginning to sound like Elizabeth Taylor here, but later on, I met my second husband, Keith Easdale, who was a piper and multi-instrumentalist, and we formed a duo together, and we recorded an album called The Fire Break. At the time, we had moved down to Dumfries and Galloway, just outside Moffat, because he was studying at the time to be a forester. And the plan was eventually we were going to go to Canada or Alaska with his job. And believe it or not, so being down in that area as well with Moffat and Dumfries, there, I was just surrounded by Burns the whole time. So Burns was back in my life again, apart from the songs. And we also formed a couple of bands, Whiskey Fingers, and later on Calisig, and we toured the world and did a lot of recordings with Calisig, sung a lot of Burns as well as a lot of other traditional songs and music. And it was great fun.
So has it always been traditional music that you've sung?
No, I've always sung different types of music. I think my father was very strict. If you were at the piano and he was teaching you something, you had to do it properly. So he was a stickler for diction and enunciation and pronunciation and very much, you know, tone and intonation and everything. And he was quite strict, but I'm glad he was, because I've benefited from that later on in my professional career. So, I sung all sorts of stuff, as I've said, anything from sort of Barbara Streisand numbers to a sort of light opera, sort of Gilbert and Sullivan, jazz standards, country, western, pop, anything and everything, bossa nova. I mean, I love all kinds of music. I don't have a preference for one another. And I think what was a good thing with that growing up was that I didn't grow up with any kind of musical prejudices, you know, where, you know, you're meant to like a certain kind of music and a certain artist. But I didn't have any of that. So that was good. And we also had an extensive record library in Uddingston that I was never away from. I was in once a week, getting out 2-3 records, taking them home. What did I like, you know? Tape them if you weren't meant to do. And then buying the things that I liked and buying singles every week, as every kid did back there on the old 45 vinyl, as well as listening to all my dad's records as well. But I had to wait till he was at work because I wasn't allowed to touch his record collection. So I had to be very careful. He had the whole hi-fi separate sold set up, and I thought, right, well, I want to listen to this one, I better be really careful with it. So. And also, like every other kid, listening to Radio Luxembourg under the covers at night, and no matter how quietly I had the transistor radio on, my dad always heard it through in the bedroom next door and would come in and say, like, get that off, get to sleep.
And over time, if my research is correct, you've been on stage with some fairly famous names, at least famous to me, because some of them were from my era.
Uh-huh.
So is there any of these names that you can name drop?
Name drop. Clang. I've been on stage with Donovan. That was quite an experience. That was in Denmark. They asked Donovan and I to sing a song together at the skiing festival for the last night of the festival on stage, and we did the Wild Mountain Time. So I've done that with Donovan on stage, and he was great fun because the guitarist in the band in Calasig, Andy Webster, his mum was a huge Donovan fan, and when she found out, you know, that Donovan was there, we actually managed to get Donovan to speak to her on the phone. Andy phoned her on his mobile, and she was in Asda at the time. She says she dropped all the shop. She couldn't believe it. That Donovan was speaking to her on the phone. So, yeah, and we've supported a couple of other artists you might know, like Donny Monroe from, my memory is getting worse. Names and places are terrible. Let me think, who else? Shane McGowan. Shane McGowan. That was quite an experience. That was for Celtic Connections at the Fruit Market in Glasgow, and we were all waiting backstage. But at this point, just before we were going on stage, Shane McGowan was stuck in the airport in Dublin because they wouldn't let him fly. So we had to play to his audience, and we thought, oh no, they're not going to like us at all. But we went on, we get the pipes out, get the Gaelic song going, we get the Burn stuff going, and this audience had their lighters up, so that was quite an experience in Glasgow. And it took Shane McGowan quite a while to get there, and I think by the time we got there, his audience were pretty well oiled, and it was like a different audience altogether. It was quite an experience.
And you don't just use your music as a performer. You also do some work in hospitals, don't you?
I work for an organisation called Music in Hospitals and Care Scotland. It's changed its name over the years. Before that, it was just Music in Hospitals. Before that, it was the British Council for Music in Hospitals. And before that, it was ENSA. I don't know if people maybe not be old enough for remember ENSA were the section of the British Army that played to the troops during the war. So after the war, what happened was there was a lot of wounded in the hospitals. So instead of playing on the battlefront, they went into the hospitals to play. So that came out of that. And our patron was Dame Vera Lynn up until quite recently. So I my accompanist, Gregor Lowry, who's a fantastic accordion player. We play hospitals, hospices, daycare centres, lunch clubs, clubs for people with learning difficulties, and it can be anywhere. Literally, we've been from Shetland to the Solway and everywhere in between. But obviously this last year, that hasn't been happening. So we're looking forward to getting back to do that, because it really is, it's our favourite gig. It's what we love doing. It's just fantastic. We love it.
So you're obviously quite community minded, because you said that a timing of this recording would need to be to allow you to go and do your volunteering in the community centre.
Yeah, we've got the community, the hall. It's a village hall. It's called the Three Villages Hall, which the three villages are Arrochar, Tarbert and Succoth, and it's run by volunteers. So I tried to take my part in that. Yeah, especially during the just now when I'm not out playing. I don't think I'm playing anywhere again until December. So, and I think once the nights start drawing in, I will probably not be volunteering at the hall of an evening, because it's a bit of a cycle down in the dark and the ice in winter up here. It's can be a bit nasty. So I'll probably not be doing that over the winter. Leave that.
That's very good. And you were talking about bands, and your current band has got a Burns connection. And I remember seeing you at Mauchline Holy Fair and enjoying the performance. Is that the only band you play with at the moment?
Well, the band was actually, it was a project that ran from 2009, from the anniversary, the 250th anniversary of Burns's birth to the 260th anniversary of Burns's birth. And there's a whole story about that as well. I don't know if you want to leave that for Burns or you want to hear that. It's up to you.
Well, we can leave that minute or two, because the last thing I wanted to ask you about, I read about a project you were involved in. Was it called Heroes?
Oh, Helensburgh Heroes. Yeah, that was about 10, 11 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
And what did that involve?
I went in as assistant musical director on a recording that we were doing with the whole community, from kids to older people, and we did David Bowie's Heroes, and it was to raise awareness of these famous people that had come from the area, and they were hoping to get a centre up and running. That hasn't happened yet. So, but I think they still have projects in the pipeline. So yeah, that was quite a while ago. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Good. Well, we've touched a wee bit in Burns as we've gone along and held ourselves back a bit. So I'll now pass over to Jim and get you talking for real about your interest in Robert Burns. Thanks, Kirsten.
Okay. Thank you.
Kirsten, I take it from what you're saying, you first collide with Burns at home.
Yes, I did. My father was he was a Burns singer as much as a classical singer, and yeah, one night my dad went out with the dinner suit on and the music case under his arm, and I said to my mum, "Where's my dad singing tonight?" She says, "Oh, he's going to a Burns supper." And 5-year-old, 6-year-old me sort of couldn't wrap my head around this at all, because I thought, why would anybody want to eat a burnt supper? Do they go there and burn the dinner deliberately? So I had to ask my mum, what is a burnt supper? So she then explained to me, she said, well, you see these songs you're singing with your dad at the piano, Robert Burns wrote them. And she explained all about what a Burns supper was and what it involved. And then, you know, when my dad came home the next day, I was wanting to see the programme that he had and go through it. So Burns has been in my life for quite a while. Okay.
When did you start with the performing Burns? Is it at the piano with your dad and then you just carry that on?
Just carried it on. Burns was always, you know, the Burns song, My Love's Like a Red, Red Rose, You Banked and Bays, all these songs were always kind of songs that I sang along with other things at the piano with my dad.
Did you ever go to Burns suppers to sing yourself?
And no, never until I was an adult. No, it was that time as well. Burn suppers were very much, especially the ones that my dad went, were all male affairs. So it wasn't really. So I remember asking him, "Can I come with you? Can I come?" No, you can't come. And my mum had to explain to me that it was all men that went to burn suppers and things. But I remember we lived in Uddingston. We lived right next to the woods, and through the woods was Bothwell Castle. And I used to spend a lot of time in the woods and a lot of time at the castle. And I'd be walking along beside the river and think, you know, ye banks and braes, a bonny doon, and oh, there's the woodbine, and there's the, you know, the wee birds singing. And there was that connection as well. So I think between that and Robert Burns he's responsible for me being a romantic my whole life.
Well, what about a favourite Burns song then? Have you got one?
I suppose, I mean, there's so many of them, it's hard to pick, but I suppose the early Burns songs that I learned, probably Ye Banks and Braes, always sticks in my mind. It was always one that if I picked up an instrument, I would try to play Ye Banks and Braes on it to just get the hang of it. But later on, I got more into when I'd done the complete songs with Dr. Fred Freeman. When I was involved with that, I got more interested in the life of Burns, because Fred was a mine of information, and he used to, you know, he'd speak a lot as we would go out and do live shows with him, and he would tell the audience all about Burns and be listening rapt. And I think he's responsible for me wanting to learn more. So I started reading biographies of Burns, got more interested in his life and learning about what the myths were about Robert Burns and what was reality. And then in 2009, decided for the 250th anniversary that I would get myself an Edinburgh edition. So I managed to get an Edinburgh edition online. Fantastic. I think it was missing its two front boards, so I got it bound into one with the two back boards. But my partner, Steve Niblock, who also has Burns connections as well, he decided he wanted one as well. So he managed to get half an edition, the second half of the edition, because that's how they published it. They published it in two parts at the time, a 1793, and there was a signature inside it, Mist and Bar of Both. And I thought, oh, I know that name. And I just fell down a rabbit hole altogether, researching who she was. She turned out she was Rattling Roaring Willie's niece. You know, William Dunbar of the Crochallan Fencibles. He was the colonel of the Crochallan Fencibles. So I learned more about him. I learned more about her and her Burns connections with Anne Grant of Lagan, etc. And she knew people that had met Burns. So that was, and she loved Burns as well. She wrote in some of her letters about Burns to Anne Grant of Lagan. So that was fascinating. And discovered some contemporary music by Donald Grant from 1799 with titles for tunes of which were titled after her relatives and her mother in particular. So put together a set with Bringing the Spirit for that. So, and Bringing the Spirit, as I said before, came about with 2009. I was approached at a dinner by Lionel McClelland, the late great Lionel McClelland from Dumfriesshire, from Moffat. Say, do you want to form a band? Let's form a band. We'll get Gregor, we'll do this. And I thought, oh, I don't know, Lionel, if I want to go through all being in a band again. But so the very next day, I was in the Globe, and Jane Brown asked if I would come and do something for the 250th anniversary. So I phoned Lionel and I says, okay, let's get a band together. What are we going to call ourselves? So it had to be something to do with the Globe. So that's why we picked the name Bring in the Spirit, which comes from the second half of, well, it's a Grace After Dinner, which was written in the Globe Inn after Burns appeared looking for his dinner, and all that was left was the landlord's dinner. So it was, O Lord, since we have feasted thus, which we so little merit, let Megnu tak awa the flesh and joke, bring in the spirit. So Bring in the Spirit it was. And we did that project for a number of years, 10 years, till the 260th anniversary. We did some recordings, which we're so lazy we haven't brought them out yet because they're not finished. We had got a grant from Creative Scotland. We were given an award to take it on tour, and we toured around Scotland. And our last gig was for Airburns Club for the 260th anniversary, and that was our last gig. So it was quite fitting. We kind of did it the wrong way around, rather than starting in Ayr and finishing in Dumfries, we started in Dumfries and finished in Ayr.
Right. Just, you mentioned Fred Freeman, and I know you're in this, but I always get a plug when anybody mentions it, because for me it's just wonderful. And if you're a Burnsian and you've no got it, got hold of Fred and get a set, because it's worthwhile. Now,
well, if you just go on to Lynn Records website, go into Lynn Records and type in Robert Burns, you'll get all the, I don't know if they do CDs now, they might do some of them, but it'll probably be all downloads. I think you can download individual tracks, you don't need to download the whole lot, but the box set's really good. I bring it out and listen to it every so often. There's lots of singers on there, lots of great songs. So
I think the last time we plugged it was when we were doing a podcast with John Morden.
Yeah, John Moran and I have played together on some of Fred's tours. I think we've been to Aberdeen and Northern Ireland together as well. We played over there as part of Fred's live show. Yeah, John's a fantastic singer and bouzouki player. He's a lovely guy as well.
Yes, but we've been talking about Bun songs, and I mean, my mouth's a bit water here. So, any chance you could maybe sing us a song?
You want me to sing a song? Okay.
That's my job.
Take we drink of water. Okay. What about Rattling Road and Willie? Which is
perfect.
Both. So. Rattling Road and Willie he hied unto the fair for to sell his fiddle and buy some other way. But petting way his fiddle the sod did lent easy. Rattling Road and Willie, you're welcome hame to me. Willie, come sell your fiddle, say fine. Willie, come sell your fiddle and buy a pint of wine. If I was to sell my fiddle, the world would think I was mad. Money's a rant and day my fiddle and I had. As I can buy Crochal and I cannily keek it ben. Rattling Road and Willie was sitting at John Borden, and a man get company. Rattling Road and Willie, you're welcome hame to me. Willie, come sell your fiddle, say fine. Willie, come sell your fiddle and buy a pint of wine. If I was to sell my fiddle, the world would think I was mad. Money's the rant and day my fiddle and I had.
Oh,
Excellent.
you didn't pick an easy one to start off with.
Oh dear. But I do like the poetry as well, and I love reading all about his life. And I've kind of fallen down a rabbit hole again with I moved to Aracher 3 years ago to Succoth, And funnily enough, it was at the roundabout Burns Night 2020. You forget there's like a whole year gone. I'm thinking, is it this year? No, it can't be this year. It must have been the year. Maybe it was this year. I think it was this year. And a friend had asked me if I would, do something online for the local primary school. So I had some videos and things I was able to point them to. But while she was on the phone, she said, of course, you know that Burns stayed at my house when he was here. And I thought, if I had a penny for every time I've heard that one. But anyway, I thought I would do a bit of research, and I was able to, give her some interesting information, find out some interesting information myself along the way. And I decided I needed to know where this Crocharibus was, because so many people in the village, well, not so many, a few people in the village were claiming, Burns stayed here. But as we all know, Burns stayed at the Tarbert Inn. So, but the big mystery was, where is Crocharibus, which is in the letter? That was the address that you wrote down, Crocharibus by Loch Long, Aracher. Now, at the time, Aracher wasn't a village, it was the estate. So Aracher was a big area. And I thought, Crocharibus, nobody knew, nobody knew. So I started to put it out to some people, like the Scottish Place Name group on Facebook. I got a few suggestions as to what it could be. No. And then, funnily enough, it was a Gaelic singer, Margaret Stewart, who also teaches at the Gaelic College at Savile Marostig and Skye. And she was able to tell me straight away exactly what Crocharibus was. And Crocharibus is actually the hill of Tarbert, which I can actually see. If I look out my bedroom window or I look out the garden, I can see it's a few hundred yards away. So it is the hill. And I discovered that there was a post station there where the footposts crossed over between Dumbarton and Inverary at the time. So that would obviously have been where he posted his letter from. It could have been where he wrote his letter from, but I do have another theory as well. And I was supposed to write a note on this for Jerry, sorry Jerry, for the upcoming chronicle, but as I say, I fell down a rabbit hole and there's so much more to discover. But I have discovered what that means, and it was through a Gaelic speaker and a Gaelic singer. And because this area was all Gaelic speaking at the time Burns came through, and that's why Gaelic place names are so important. So that's quite exciting.
Well, we'll look forward to that being published so we can all have a read at it.
Hopefully.
I mean, that whole tour and when he came back down the side of Loch Lomond was quite fascinating. Because he did his wee horse race there as well, and the thing we discovered that we organised tours for our Burns Club over a period of many years. And we discovered that it was round about the Duck Bay area that he had come across the Bab the Bowster, which was a forerunner of Bob Abbotty. And if you'd been there that year, you'd have seen a group of about 30 men, old and young, trying to reenact Burns instructing folk in Bab the Bowster.
Yeah, that was at, there was two, I think he stayed in two, was that at Ardennes?
Yes.
That was at Ardennes, because Banachra, the original house isn't there at Banachra, but certainly I believe that the stables are original. So Burns would have stabled his horse in those stables, but it's a private house, and I don't think the gentleman who owns it is all that keen on having Burns folk up. So, but yeah, it's fascinating that Grierson wrote about that, and of course half of the manuscript is missing, that possibly was destroyed in a flood, so we don't know about the first half and which way he went. But I've got my own theory on that too, which links up the other end of the tour. I don't believe that he came out and back the same direction. I don't think he would have wasted his time to do that, to retrace his steps. I think he would have wanted to see as much as he could on a tour in the little time that he had before he returned to his shades. So I think my feeling is that he started his tour from Glasgow, went up past the Earl of Glencairn's place. He would have stayed in there. There's actually an engraving on a window in there. And then he went via Greenock and the ferry over to Dunoon and down via the ferry at St Catherine's or Strucker, probably Strucker, and went to either across in the ferry to Inverary from there or all the way round. So that's my theory anyway, having read it. I'm still in the middle of reading all these fascinating books about the 3 centuries of Scottish post and all the information that's in the, you know, books about the building of Inverary Castle and things like that. There's always so much more to discover. It's just knowing when to stop, where to stop. But I think I'd like to. I've spent the last year researching it all and kind of collating it all, and I really have to sit down properly and write about it and put it together. So.
Well, the current team that organises the new Cumnock outings will be waiting with bated breath for your publication, because that will give them material for another trip.
Well, we'll have to meet when you come up the next time, and I can show you a few things.
Sounds
show you
perfect.
a few things that are still around from his time, and yeah, you can still see part of the old road, the old bridge, and the route that he would have taken and where he would have went. And there's also there's a local legend as well, which he didn't stay there, but he could quite possibly have stopped and had a drink out of the rain there. So, but again, that's just a theory. It's just my theory.
Over the years, you've been connected with a couple of Burns clubs. You mentioned that your connections with their Burns club. Are there any others that you've been involved with?
Yes, I was in Helensburgh Burns Club for a while, and those are the only 2 Burns clubs that I've been in. I've just always sung Burns wherever I was, and would have been lucky enough to have sung all over the world and at Burns suppers, as well as concerts and various things in some far-flung places. I remember once the guitarist, I was told on the way in at Bangkok airport just before we were about to go through immigration that the guitarist was smuggling the haggis. And I was like, oh no, we're going to end up in the Bangkok Hilton. I was like, oh no, I don't want to do this. So it's situations like that. And then sort of being on television programs in Russia, and where they're sort of, and the whisper goes round, don't touch the haggis, it's 3 days old, you know, like, right, okay. Good fun, oh, good fun.
So how many countries have you been to?
Oh gosh, how many countries?
It doesn't need to be an exact number, just...
France, Germany, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Russia, Thailand, Ghana, Canada, America, Ireland.
What were you doing in Ghana?
Funnily enough, a Burns supper. And in fact, I've been over there twice for the Burns supper for the Caledonian Society of Accra. So I've been over there twice. And the second time I went over, not only did I have to sing, but unfortunately the chieftain wasn't too well, and he asked me if I would do the Immortal Memory. So I kind of half had one there. So I had the computer, and I was writing it the day before I had to give it. So, but I was very honoured to do that. So, and it was all about the song. So I've got an Immortal Memory there if it's ever needed.
but that part of the world has got great connections with Scotland. I know that when my kids were at Auchinleck Academy, they went to the Gambia for an exchange. So there's great connections over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were only over. I would only be over for like 2 days. We'd fly out on the Friday night, play the gig on the Saturday, and fly back out on Sunday night again, which sounds a bit, rushed, but it's amazing how close Africa is actually. The flight itself is only something like 5 hours from London, so, and you're on the same time zone, so you don't have that whole jet lag thing going on either. So it was actually quite quick to fly there and back for the weekend. So.
Good. And presumably when you go to the States, you're welcomed with open arms over there.
Yeah, I've only actually played in the States once. It's just such a difficult, all the immigration and the work permits, and you have to go to the, embassies in London or Belfast. It's, to be honest, by the time you pay for it, and it's actually not worth going, especially if there's a good few of you going as well. But I've played in Memphis, got to play in Memphis, and also record in Sun Studios as well. So that was fun. Once they do tours in there, so once the tourists were out at the end of the day, we had the Sun Studios all to ourselves with Calisig, and we recorded a wee session in there on the spot where Elvis was. So that was good fun, quite an experience. But it's mostly been North America. It's Canada. We used to go over every year and tour Canada every year. And I've also been over there. I recorded an album over there. A solo album was recorded over there. And I think I've been to Canada 6 times, something like that. Half a dozen times at least.
Well, we've had a song, but you were talking earlier on about reading Burns' his works and poems. Have you got a favourite poem?
Well, there's a lot of poems I do like, but I think the one that I like best is it's Burns's rebuttal to all these critics, especially the ones that are the Holy Willies and keeking down their nose at him. And I like the address to the Unca Good, or the rigidly righteous, the one that starts, "Oh ye who are so good yoursel, say pious and say holy, you've naught to do but mark and tell your neighbour's faults and folly." But I think my favourite line in that about the high exalted dames, he says to them, "But let me whisper your lug, your aiblins nae temptation," which puts them in their place. I do like that one.
And what have you got in your future? Have you got any plans coming up?
Well, it's in as far as possible, unless I'm elsewhere working. I will usually on the 25th. For the last few years, I've kept the 25th free so that I can go down and sing at Burn Statue in the air. Kathleen Davey and Robbie McMahon have been very hospitable to me over the years, and I always like to go down and sing at the statue if I'm invited, and I've been invited the last few years, so it's nice to go down there and take part in all of that. But as I say, who knows what will come up this Burns year. I was so disappointed that just before the lockdown, I'd been invited to the Bachelors Club in Tarbolton, and I was so excited to go to that and meet up with everybody. And then, of course, it was like, COVID came, and I thought, I'm not sure if I'm going to make this. And then all of a sudden, it was lockdown anyway. And I hadn't quite get the hang of Zoom by then, so I couldn't take part, but I was able to watch it on YouTube. So at least I was able to watch it. But who knows what will happen this year or this coming year.
Well, you've come on here because you're a wonderful Burns singer, and we can't let you away with another song, obviously of your choice, if you can manage to give those lovely make-a-views.
Well, I think it's always appropriate to finish with Auld Lang Syne. So maybe do that one if I can remember the key.
Can I just advise you that it wouldn't be a good idea to get us to join in?
You've always got to join in with Auld Lang Syne, but it's entirely up to yourselves.
But seriously, on Zoom, Auld Lang Syne becomes it's historically funny. Seriously, it just bounces everybody there. So
my sister's in a Gaelic choir, and they've been Zooming it all year, and I've heard some of the things from all over. It's quite a deal. Yeah, everybody in different places trying to sing in the same key. Anyway, so thank you very much for having me, and I've really enjoyed it. They say that sitting down being interviewed is a bit like therapy, so hopefully that's helped me get through the pandemic and get back into the world and get out of my hermitage. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and Auld Lang Syne? For Auld Lang Syne, my Jo, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a kiss o' kindness yet. For Auld Lang Syne. Now here's on my trusty fear, and gie's a hand o' thine, and we'll take a right good willy walk for Auld Lang Syne. For Auld Lang Syne, my Jo, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a cup o' kindness yet. For Auld Lang Syne, for Auld Lang Syne, my Jo, for Auld Lang Syne, we'll take a kiss o' kindness yet. For Auld Lang Syne.
That was tremendous. Just a fantastic way to end this episode. So it just leaves me to say, Kirsten, thank you very much for telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.